I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Earlier this fall, the Joplin Area Chamber of Commerce presented a report to the City Council kind of updating what's happening in economic development. And of course, there's a lot happening in the area. But today we're focusing on a new program coming to Joplin, a training center that's going to offer some opportunities for many people. Joining me, Tonya Sprenkle, the Vice President of the Chamber. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
I guess we need to start off for our viewers, just if someone were to walk up to you on the street and say, well, how do you define what does the Chamber of Commerce do? How do you define that for them?
A little bit of everything, but mostly we try to support the businesses in our area. And it's everything from bringing new business and industry to town to making sure that the mom and pop employers in town are able to find employees and to have the best business climate that they can possibly have.
So you're the place for current businesses to go for information and resources, as well as prospective businesses come and knock on the door.
Correct. That would be the case.
Right. Well, and the program we're talking about today is the Advanced Training and Technology Center, something people have probably heard a little bit about in the news. And this is a different aspect of not necessarily opening a business, but servicing the businesses.
Correct. It's something that we actually started in as far back as October of 2014. We've had an eye on that building over there for a long time, thinking that would make a great addition to the services that we offer if we could figure out a proper use for the building. And so when we found out that there were disaster recovery funds available, we took a good hard look at what uses that building could provide. And we did decide that training people to improve their employment status would be a great thing to do, and also to have the additional space for incubator space. We currently own the Newman Innovation Center, which is on the other side of the chamber office. And so by being able to actually double the footprint of the innovation space gives us a lot more room for new businesses to start up, small businesses that are struggling or just getting out of their garage and into a better scenario would be a great place for them to go.
Right. Well, let's define for the audience where we're talking about. We say a building. Where are we talking? Location for that.
Right. Well, of course, the chamber office is at 320 East 4th Street. Right. The Newman Innovation Center is just over half a block to the west of us, and then the new Advanced Training and Technology Center is the building just directly to the east side of the chamber. It's actually between Grand and Kentucky, between 4th and 5th Street.
Okay. So if people who are familiar with going toward the downtown area on 4th Street, they recognize those buildings all on the south side of the street. And so forth. Now this building had a history as well, because it was used post-tornado.
Right. It had been a drug warehouse for many, many years, and at various times had different things in it. But predominantly in the summer of 2011, Franklin Tech renovated the building and used it as a temporary facility until they got into the new high school at 20th and Illinois. So
it's been shown that it can effectively be used to teach.
Absolutely. And we've taken advantage of the fact that they were able to leave behind a few things that we will be able to utilize in our programs as well.
So you said it's going back to October 2014, looking into this possibility. Explain a little bit about the process of just the feasibility. Do companies need this? What are the needs of the companies?
We did a lot of research and studying and actually filed for a grant with the city for some of the disaster recovery funds. Right. And in doing so, we explored what was needed, and we did find that many of the employers oftentimes have trouble finding the people that are trained to do the work that they need to have. And so if someone can weld, for example, but they can't weld the right techniques, or they don't weld with the right product or the right materials, they may need to advance their skills to where that they are able to move up in their job. Someone that's just learned some basic welding in high school, well, that's great. It's a good place to start, but many of the companies need someone who can do that at a higher level.
So the specialized more skills that you need to be able to meet the quality standards of the products being built by those companies.
Correct, yes.
Tying that together. So that was perhaps a challenge by companies saying, we have openings, we can't fill them.
Exactly.
So then you're saying we need to find a way to help train these people, and this is part of where the idea developed into how can we train them.
And in addition to the welding, it's also some other areas that we've worked in as well, but that was just a good example of one type of a job that oftentimes people are really looking for people that have the more in-depth skills.
So you want to support the existing companies, as well as companies look at the area to move, that you're going to have a workforce for them.
Absolutely. That is always one of the things that when a company is looking to move to the area, they want to know what our workforce is like. And of course, we have great people that work in this area. We have good work ethics. That obviously is a sincere plus. But when you want to come to work, but you don't know how to do their job, it's a challenge for people. And oftentimes finding that in your backyard, so to speak, is an extra plus for this. It's close, it's downtown, it's in the neighborhood, and there isn't another resource that has exactly the things we'll be teaching there in that community area.
So there's no duplication of efforts of other schools or things in the area.
Yeah, there are some others that teach other things, but not necessarily exactly the same skills that we're after.
So really we're talking about continuing development or continuing education for the workforce.
Right, and the nice part about this is it's not necessarily a 2-year degree. For example, Crowder, when you go on campus, you take English and math and science. Well, that's great, and that has its place for the people who need that, but sometimes people are just looking to brush up on skills on particular things, and this allows for a certification program rather than necessarily a degreed program.
So those students or those people who want that certification then they move on to those jobs that are in need and tying them together. Well, you mentioned disaster recovery funds, and people are probably curious, so how can a building that's not in the quote tornado zone be applying funds? So let's explain that tie to how that's working together.
The tie there will be that our target audience for people being in the classes and a lot of the services will be the folks that are in the low to moderate income status. And so the fact that we are targeting in that is where it pairs up very closely.
So by increasing their skills, it's increasing the community's ability to support the programs.
Yeah, because it's not always the people that are unemployed that we're after. I mean, obviously we want to help people that are unemployed, but a lot of folks are underemployed and they may be working, but they're not earning a real wage that really supports their family in the manner that they want to be supported. And by getting these increased skills, hopefully they'll be able to get those raises that will get them into a better family situation.
So you've been in a lot of communication with the local employers and who are saying we need these people, it'll help us, and we will be able to then help them.
Yes.
And tying all of that together. What about the phases of the project then? So you started off with the idea phase. We can do this. So we're going to take some time to talk to people. How do we go from that to a building that next summer will be open and operating?
Well, it took a lot of research. We had to figure out what is it going to take to turn this building that's basically a shell with a little bit of infrastructure in it into a functioning school and other services that we wanted to do. And so we've done a lot of research in terms of what materials it would take to make us be able to operate those classes, everything from what does a welding booth exactly look like, especially with the techniques that we want to teach. Also from the advanced manufacturing standpoint, what particular types of machinery are in the industries in our community now? Because there's no point in teaching one particular type of machine if nobody in town has it. So we want to make sure we're teaching the right
things. You're matching
things.
up to the needs.
Yes, that's important. And so we've done a lot of research, both the Crowder staff, our staff. We've worked a lot with the Workforce Investment Board as well, so that we can really make sure that we're targeting the right equipment to fit in the building so that we're teaching the things that need to be taught.
Now you mentioned Workforce Investment Board. Some of our viewers might be saying, well, what's that organization? How do we explain that?
They're going to be a key component for us because they're really going to be the front door of the building. They actually moved in mid-October, and so they're our first tenant
They're
in
actually
the building.
in the building now.
In the building, yes. They're getting to be the guinea pigs to make sure everything is up and running properly. And they moved in, like I said, about the middle of October, as soon as we were given authorization to allow anyone to move in.
Right?
And so they'll actually greet the people at the door, and they're helping us to screen people and determine who might make good candidates for the school.
Right.
And they can help that candidate not only get into the school, but help with some of the things that might be obstacles for them to attend school. They might be able to help them secure daycare. They might help them secure transportation. There's a lot of those types of things that are barriers for folks when they come back to go back into the training area so that they can improve their employment.
Now, are there cases where someone may already be working at a company, but the company's working with them to say, we'll give you time to be trained?
Correct. They'll also do some custom training in some cases for many industry in town if that's what the company would like to have done. And in some cases that means the company might actually pay for the classes for them, give them time away.
Plus the financial support for enrolling in these classes. Right.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Crowder, so let's bring in that part of the picture as far as the educational side of what's involved.
Well, we sat down with a lot of the local education community and just said, who is going to be our best partner for this? We explored Missouri Southern. We had Alan Marble there. We had folks from Carthage school system, and some of the other areas that do some of the technical training, and Crowder at the table as well. And we just had a really frank discussion on who did we think was going to be able to carry out the program in terms of the teaching and be the right partner for us. And in the end, Crowder was the one that was the one we thought was the best fit for the situation.
Right. So they're doing some of these programs similar already on their Neosho campus, for instance.
Correct. And we wanted to make sure, too, that we weren't stepping on anyone's toes. We didn't want to go out and teach something someone else was teaching exactly. And we wanted to make sure that in the end we were making a good solid fit, almost like a puzzle, and we're a piece that fits into that puzzle for making sure that the community has the right training available.
So people have choices. They can utilize this service, or maybe there's another service in town that'll help them for other types of skills and training and education, tying that together. So we have the building. You had to go through a process just to be able to purchase the building then.
Right. That was really a lot of fun, getting that building purchased. A lot of steps that had to go through, and we finally wound up with the actual purchase of the building at the end of April. And by then we had actually procured a contractor at that point, and we were able then to go ahead and get moving at that point very quickly. It's just been, kind of a day-to-day. It's nice it's next door, so we can just run over, go to the building, watch the progress as it happens. And it's been fascinating to see it all come together.
Let's explain a little bit what's going to be under the roof. In other words, you'll have obviously hands-on. You're talking about places to hands-on welding, the technical skills. Then you'll have traditional classrooms as well?
Right. There are 6 classrooms in the main core of the south half of the building. There will be 2 of those classrooms are for the welding itself. One will be for advanced manufacturing. 2 of those are related to the computer technology classes. One of those being, for example, if you wanted to learn how to actually do programming. You want to learn how to run the different computer software programs that are existing out there. Those types of training in that room. You go over next door into the next room, you're going to learn how to tear a computer down, build your computer from scratch, how to work on the electronics and do repairs, those types of things. Then you cross the hall into the north half of the building, there's a 3rd computer class over there. And that one will be AutoCAD, so you can learn to do drafting and so forth, because there's still a lot of very high skills that are needed for that. You go next door to that, there is a small area for some medical classes, and those are still being defined. We're still not exactly certain what ones are going to be taught by the time we actually start next fall. But there is a small footprint in there for that. And there's a counselor's office that will be associated with that as well. So they'll actually have an on-campus counselor there. And it happens to be right outside the WIB door. So if someone comes in, the WIB goes, hey, you really need to go next door and let's talk about this. They walk them out the back door of their area and right into the counselor's office.
So there's going to be support staff there working with them around the clock and helping them with the program. Now, when you're talking about the computer aspect, are you finding that more companies are saying manufacturing, for instance, is changing? It's not just somebody pounding a rivet or welding. There's a lot more computer technology needed for those jobs.
There is, and that's where the advanced manufacturing comes in. That particular one, they have they call it a PLC unit, and can't think for the life of me exactly what that stands for, but it is a system to where they can come in and they can learn just exactly what it's going to be like on the work floor. And they learn step by step the things that they need to do. And again, that's where being in contact on a regular basis with those manufacturers is very important. And Crowder has actually some advisory councils that include a lot of people from the various companies in town and in their surrounding area, so that they can really be up to the last minute on what it is that they need to have.
Imagine that's a changing world too.
It is.
It's just like everything else. Computers change, and so do those programs that they're working with, probably changing all the time and working together. Well, you're looking at mentioning companies in the region. What sort of surrounding regional impact do you see? Of course, we have businesses in Joplin, but there's some outside as well. Well,
the main focus actually is a very small circle in terms of this, because it really is because of the tornado impact,
disaster funding,
disaster recovery funding. We are trying to focus that in more on the general close vicinity of the Joplin area. simply because we are trying to meet the needs of the low to moderate income in that footprint. That doesn't mean we won't occasionally have some students from a little farther out, because we may have a skill that they can't find in their community, which obviously means they're going to come to work in our community. So you may not necessarily live in that area, but oftentimes they're going to be working in that area because we are kind of a hub, not only for shopping and the various things like that, but for employment as well.
Right. People drive into town to work all the time, go back to the outlying community where they actually live. Tying that. So for the students' perspective, they will go through, I guess I'll call it an enrollment procedure as they are interested in these programs. And
correct. They'll just go through like they would to join any college, but at this point, though, like I said, it is really more of a certificate program as opposed to necessarily a 2-year degree program. And so it will be a much shorter time frame for them, and they go straight into the skills they need. If someone doesn't know how to weld at all or doesn't know anything about manufacturing, we can start with a brand new student that hasn't had any experience, because we will be able to bring them up from ground zero, so to speak, and get them into that higher level. But if you have some skills and are already working, this will be a place to really just beef up your skills and make you more employable, or make it so that you're more attractive to some of the better paying jobs.
The jobs that are out there that people are looking for to help fill those positions at times. Now, something else you mentioned earlier on was the Innovation Center. And so we probably won't hurt to remind the audience, we talked about the Newman Innovation Center, what that involves and how that ties into the chamber.
Well, that was a little over 10 years or so ago that we bought the building that had been everything from a mechanical warehouse for the city at one time, I believe years ago. It had been a paint company, various different things over the years, and we just stripped the building and turned it in.
Big red brick building, right?
Yeah, it's now a big it was a big ugly white building. Now it's a beautiful brick building that's been renovated. We call it the funky warehouse look. If you walk through, you can see the heating and cooling system. It's just hanging from the ceiling, and it's beautiful, though. It's just a nicely renovated building, and it's 11,000 square feet, and by the time you take out the common space and some area for reception and staircases and conference rooms, there really isn't that many square feet for true tenants in the building.
For their actual, quote, office space or working space.
Yeah,
right?
you're somewhat slimmed down. And so by adding the space in the other building, we're actually going to double our capacity for having companies in. And we're really excited about that. Now, the look in the new building is very different than the Newman building. The Newman being that brick and having that stone look to it. This other, it's a block building. Right. It is what it is.
It's going to look like it.
But we've really divided it up into some areas inside that should be very interesting and make for a lot more private space than what we had in the other building. And so people will be able to feel like they can start a business and have a little privacy, but yet have some larger areas for someone with a bigger project to have to expand into over time.
Right. Now, 10 years in the building that you have, you've probably seen a lot of success stories where people have started there as something small and have gone on from the success stories.
It's been really fun to watch. We've had a lot of companies come and go. We actually still have our original company that started. In fact, they started in a single wide trailer on our parking lot.
Wow.
And so there's been a lot of jokes about that. They have changed names over time. They're now Accenture, but they're still in there. And it's oftentimes in that type of a situation that you do have a cornerstone business, so to speak.
Right.
It does help with the cash flow. You have someone that's consistent. But I think one of the more interesting things about having a company in there like that is that it's someone that people can go to and ask questions because they've been there. They've done that. They have some experience. And they're also in that high-tech field, which is one of the things that we really do like to target. And so they become, sort of a mentor for the others in the building as a result of having been there for a while. And if there's problems, people go to them and talk to them about it.
So are you seeing a need for more, as you say, well, obviously more space, but more people with ideas or entrepreneurs saying, I just wish I had a place where I could go?
Well, the average incubator usually has about a quarter of their space open, and yet we have almost from the very beginning been anywhere between 85 and 100% full. So that means when somebody comes up and says, hey, we need space, sometimes we don't have space. So we are really excited now to have space so that people can come in and start.
So do you anticipate that space opening up in the new building about the same time as the classes, or is there a timetable tied into that?
I think some of that will begin to open up sooner
Oh,
than
okay.
the classes. We'll actually be able to run that independent of the school. So it's not dependent on how quick the classes get started, because it is totally the opposite end of the building and doesn't require some of the long, detailed procurement that we're going to have on the other end of the building.
Now the project itself, I know you had the funding, and we have they call it a dashboard from the city, kind of with the community development block grant disaster funds, and it kind of shows the projects throughout the whole city, but there's a page on there, and we have it up on the screen for the viewers. You can see the kind of a bird's eye view of the building in the area that we're discussing, but for the viewers, if they want more details, you can see that you can go through step by step and what your targets are, and for that. So the first part of it, a big chunk of money has already been expended.
It has, yes. Phase 1 was actually the acquisition and the renovation of the building. We are down to just some of the very minute things on the inside of the building, the actual signage on the outside of the building, and then the parking lot. The parking lot is still yet to be finished. We actually have, in addition, as you can see about the center of the screen there, that rectangle building right about just slightly to right of the diagram, right there, I think they're pointing at it, is the main building, but we actually have the parking lot just to the south of 5th Street as well, and so that has to be
developing that parking lot into a usable space and so forth. So first phase is let's get the building and get it built. Now there's a phase 2 on the project.
And phase 2 is $2.6 million worth of equipment. And it takes a lot of equipment to set up that type of building. There's everything from the 2 rooms that have welding, one has 16 stations, the other has 18 stations. So we can have a lot of students in there at one time. And at maximum capacity, we could actually run a day class and night class in both of those as well. So we could double that really quick just by simply running day and night classes.
So I can see where you need the parking space for those students to park if they're coming for training.
They do have the striping and so forth then on the outside of the parking to the east of the building. And we did, for safety's sake, along the north edge of that parking lot, we've actually put a little barrier there. We were afraid of people trying to pull directly out onto 4th Street out of the parking lot. And that's a hill, pretty good traffic coming down through there. So you actually have to exit out onto Grand to get up onto 4th Street.
Turn out and go around the corner to get there for safety. But so right now you're really in that equipment stage, funding and planning, and imagine a lot of communication has been going on between the companies and the manufacturers and so forth in town.
Yeah, and we did a lot of that earlier on. So now it's really refining it and getting it down to packages that can easily be bid. One of the obstacles is a little bit of the fact that you can't necessarily advertise for particular brands. You have to be a little more generic. And so getting that down to where people can truly understand exactly what you need without saying, well, it's this model or this
ABC
brand.
company's piece of equipment.
So that's a little bit of a challenge for us right now, is trying to make sure that the bid is very easily understood and very specific as to what is needed, but yet still not really reflect a particular model or brand name.
Right. So that timetable, then you're going to be putting that equipment in throughout the spring. I guess we're in the fall already, but that's an ongoing winter-spring project.
We bid out most of the welding and the AMT, the Advanced Manufacturing Training, and some of the infrastructure that has to go in. What we have yet to do is the security system for the building, a phone system, and furniture, fixtures, and I'm trying to think of the other items there.
So you have the big pieces of equipment. Now you're down to the nitty-gritty. Let's make the building work.
We prioritized it, but one of the things I'm extremely excited about is the culinary part of the building. There was a culinary kitchen in there, and that in particular is one of the areas where we were able to take advantage of some of the infrastructure that was left behind by Franklin Tech. There are certain kinds of equipment that just did not make sense for them to move out that was put in there, and one of those is a great big hood. And it's the hood that goes over the top of the stoves and the fryers and all those types of pieces of equipment. Extremely expensive piece of equipment, but it is basically bound by infrastructure like gas lines and electrical lines.
Tying it all together with the building. It's part of the building.
You would have to literally strip all of that out to take it out. So we were able to take advantage of the fact that it's there and utilize that, and so we kept the footprint for the kitchen very much the same. And we've actually been getting some traction on some folks that are talking about, gosh, when's that kitchen going to be done? We'd love to get started and move in and start utilizing it. So that's an area that, although Crowder has not specifically decided to start teaching classes in. We have that capability once we get the kitchen up and going. But we've designed the kitchen in such a way that it can be used for culinary classes, could be used for catering. Say you want to create your own barbecue sauce or your own special, spaghetti sauce or whatever it is that you want to do, a new product, you would be able to come in, rent the space for just blocks of time and utilize the kitchen.
So it's available for those people who are trying to start their businesses to get those products up and running, so forth. So timetable, when do you anticipate we're going to have a ribbon cutting and people are going to say, let's come see the building, it's ready to see?
Well, I would say probably early in the spring or mid-spring.
Okay.
We'll be able to take groups through more on that. It's going to take a while to get that equipment actually in place and ready to go for classes. But we're going to work on it as quickly as we can and making sure we're getting everything in the right spot and getting it working properly. But we'll have a great big celebration, and then of course when school starts in the fall, we will have a really big celebration.
Showing the students utilizing that equipment. So for people who are watching that maybe they're interested in taking classes or getting that advanced training that they don't have right now, when should they start knocking on doors or saying I'm interested in coming here? Well,
I think the first thing they could do is contact the Workforce Investment Board. Go ahead and get in contact with them. Start getting their names spooled up and start having those dialogues early on.
So it doesn't hurt now to even go by there and say, I want to talk to somebody who's on this program.
Absolutely.
And tying that together. Now another item you have I noticed on your news page that you had in your newsletter, it says a brand new makerspace for the Joplin makers.
Yes, there's about 5,000 square foot in this building that we're really excited about because it's going to be a fun place. We've had about a 600 to 800 square foot over in the Newman Innovation Center, where we've had a group that are called makers, and they like to come in and tinker with stuff. But oftentimes they either don't know how to use the equipment or those types of things. They just know that they want to learn.
I want to learn how to do this. I want to take it apart and try it.
So we have basically two groups of people. We have the group of people that are highly skilled and love to teach, and then you have those that would love to learn. And so this is a place to have both in the same place. And for example, we've got some folks that love the 3D printers, and they actually build their own 3D printers, or they build their own computers and really do all the little integral things to make them work. But they can bring up somebody alongside them that can learn to do that as well. Same type of thing with woodworking and different things like that. And so we're in the planning stages of getting that equipment all installed so that people can come in and do that. And we will have a number of people that will be certified, so to speak, to actually be the folks in hand to actually train the next person to utilize the equipment. So you will only have access to that if you've been trained on the equipment. Then you can come in when people that are trained and work with them so that you can become certified to use the equipment as well.
So another service, another opportunity for the community. Well, Tonya, I'd like to thank you very much for coming today, sharing information for our audience. And look forward to following up on your progress in the next spring as well.
Very good.
Thank you. And I'm Judy Stiles. I'd like to thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on this station. We'll see you then.